Morning. So we're continuing the theme of relationships, and these are kind of random insights. They may not hang together very well, but anyway. And today's one is about betrayal, and the statement was, no one can betray you without your permission. Now, betrayal is one of the great victim stories, isn't it, in relationships? He went off with someone else. He went off with my best friend. He betrayed me, and everybody goes, oh my God, that's terrible. And it's awful, isn't it? It is awful. But no one can betray you. Is the position that I'm taking, which is helpful, I think. It's no one can betray you without you giving them permission, without you inviting them to do that. Now, obviously, you don't invite them by going, oh yeah, please betray me, in words, do you? But it's more subtle. We don't just speak with our words. That's one of the mediums we use to speak to each other. But we also use the way we're being is communication also. Very often we have a complaint about our partner, and we won't verbalize it because we don't want to rock the boat. So it'll become something that comes in between the immediacy that we could be having, and we kind of withdraw. That withdrawal could be counted as an invitation for betrayal. If someone feels that you're withdrawn from them and they don't know why, they will invent a reason why and also withdraw. And then you'll pick up that they've withdrawn, and you'll go, well, that person is withdrawn. Why is that person withdrawn from me? Not really connecting it with the fact that you withdrew from them. And then you'll withdraw further. Then they'll go, see that you've withdrawn even more, and they'll go, wow, she really has withdrawn now. And so the next thing you know, you've withdrawn from each other, not really knowing why. And the love is dissolving. So the invitation can come in many ways. You know, if you behave in such a way that the person thinks that you're not desirable, that they're not desirable, or that many times the betrayal is preceded by a change in the sexual dynamic. You know, in the beginning of a relationship, perhaps there's a lot going on. And then it may be after a while it settles down. And then after a further while, it gets sporadic. And then maybe after a further while, especially if there's not a lot of communication, there just isn't the intimacy on an authentic and real level for open-hearted giving. There's too much unexpressed. There's too much unprocessed. And this gets in the way of the immediate intimacy in a moment. And so then someone might think, well, you don't want me, I'll find someone who does. You can't give me what I need, so I'll go and get it elsewhere. And that is a response to how you were being. Who you're being that your partner is gives you how you get them. If you get them as betraying, that's coming out of who you're being. The clearing you were for them, the space you were for them. Now, this is a stand you can take. This is a perspective you can inhabit. But it's a very powerful one because it gives you power. If you take the position, oh, my partner betrayed me and I'm a victim of his behavior, and now I'm terribly upset, then there's not really a lot you can do with that. Obviously, in the beginning, when we have a deep emotional shock like that, by all means, take refuge in the victim. Oh, he did this, and gather people around. This is what we always do. We gather our friends around and we tell them the story from our point of view about how we were victimized by the behavior of the partner who betrayed us. But it's important that as soon as you feel strong enough, you take responsibility, because this is how you'll get closure. This is how you'll be able to move on from that incident. Who were you being such that he felt it was okay to do that to you? Who are you being that you were such that he felt that it was okay to do that to you? How dare he? He did it. How dared he? He did it out of you gave him permission by who you were being that you were. I'm the sort of person that gets betrayed. I attract people who betray me. That's who you were being that you were. Who were you being that the relationship was, such that betrayal featured in it? Who are you being that he was, such that he turned up for you as a betrayer? And it's interesting because sometimes these things are really potent. You know, like with jealousy, for example. When you're being jealous of somebody, or you looked at that girl, you know, you shouldn't have looked at that girl. What did what you know, and all this. And quite often, the person themselves isn't thinking about betraying the love emotionally, energetically, or even physically. They're not thinking about it. But the jealousy comes in. Who you're being that they are is that they're the sort that would do that. So then they start to turn up for you like that. But originally they had no intention of being like that. So it's a very potent thing. Who you're being that somebody is gives you how you get them. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it is actually how it plays out. Now that's not to say that the person who did the betraying, who went off with someone else, for example, they've got to look at who they're being that their partner was. They've got to look at all that. And they've got a story there too, or something to understand there too. And the two can be completely different. When in a relationship with another person, you will be experiencing the same drama, but getting a completely different meaning from life, a completely different teaching from life. And we can never really know what the teaching of the other person is, and that's another thing in relationships, isn't it? I remember some guru saying, if you're clearer about your partner's psychological state than your own, you're in big trouble. And often we spend our whole time trying to figure out where the partner's at and what their psychological position is, when really the only thing we can really look at that's going to really have a big impact is us and who we're being that the relationship is. And the main thing is, the incredible thing, that there isn't actually a way that anything is. But it appears that there is, and it appears that it is because we're the ones generating that appearance. So anything can be anything in a way. So betrayal. Yeah, I mean, for me, I have really seen this myself, because I remember back in the day, right back in the day, there was this girl, and who I was being that she was such that I never got her, but I really wanted her. And she actually came into my social circle and had sex with lots of my friends. But I really loved her, and I didn't get her. And before that, I pretty much got everybody that I wanted. And it was a big shock. But now looking back, I clearly see who I was being that she was gave her a total invitation to be that way with those people. I completely invited her to be that way by the way I was being. Because the truth was that I was dancing with a projection and not her. And what I needed for her psychologically wasn't sex and all the rest of it. It was to this projection scenario. And at the time, I was like, I would talk to my friend and go, "Do you know who she slept with now? Oh, have you heard she slept with now?" And it would be like total victim. But I had no rights. I didn't have any rights on her. We hadn't made any agreements. But I felt like that. That's who I was being, because I had a script of being unwanted that I was living out, that was surfacing in this drama. And that's what happens if we don't realize where we're at within. Then it takes greater and greater density, so it'll come as a flash, and if you're honest and get the flash, you can get the whole thing very quickly and move on. But generally we don't, and so it comes slower, more dense thoughts. And then if we still don't get it, then life gives us a drama in which it plays out. And that's what was happening with me. I was playing out this unwanted unlovableness. And so she wouldn't necessarily have been like that. She was available. She was doing whatever she was doing. But who I was being that she was gave me this unique experience of her that wasn't really who she was to herself or how others got her. So I learned from that. So who you're being that relationships are gives you how you get them. And that springs out of who you're being that you are. Now, if who you're being that you are is that you're not good enough, then you're likely to attract a relationship that proves that right. That somewhere in the story of the relationship will be you being shown up as not good enough. And is that the truth about you? Well, you might think it is. And you might say, well, no, I actually am not good enough because, look at my past. That happened and I wasn't good enough, really, was I? Because that wouldn't have happened if I was good enough. And look at that. And in fact, I've got a whole trail of not being good enough throughout my life. But that's who the past says you are. And all of those things came out of the beingness of not being good enough, not out of the reality that you're not good enough. And a lot of people never get to that point where they make that distinction. Just because you show up as not good enough doesn't mean that you're not good enough. Just because your relationships continuously fail doesn't mean that you're not great at relationships. Because who you're being that relationships are gives you how you get them. There isn't a way that they are. But who you're being that they are gives you how they appear for you. And you might actually be, the thing is, when you really look at it, are you lovable? Are you lovable? Are you a place where love can happen? Could someone love you just exactly as you are? Are you lovable? When you ask yourself that question, generally it's yes, isn't it? And if something comes up, well, then look at that, because that's interesting. Oh, I'm too fat. Oh, I'm too old. I am, but I'm, why would anybody? I'm not as beautiful as I was. I haven't got any money. All these reasons come up. Are you loving? Are you loving being? And most people think they are, and most people are, because we are. And the thing to get clear, I reckon, is that being lovable and being loving, the key thing there is just as you are. It's not when I've dropped a stone, then I'll be totally lovable, or when I've got a new dress, or when I've got more money, or when I've, whatever. Just now, right now, because love doesn't have a reason. it's a magic, it's a gift, it's a grace. You know, I mean, and just when you think it's not going to happen, it happens. That's what happened to me. I thought I was 58. No, maybe, yeah, 58. And I thought, you know what, I've had a really good innings. I had this period of time where I was able to remember all of the relationships that I'd had, and I'd had a lot of them. I thought, wow, you know, one after the other. And I thought, well, you know, probably now I'm kind of done, you know. And then, out of the blue, the best relationship I ever had came for 4 years. And it was a beautiful relationship. And I would say it was one where, more than ever before, it was not a psychological entanglement. It was loving awareness, two beings flowing and not getting entangled. And so you never know when it's going to happen. Astrology doesn't tell you. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it does and it still doesn't happen. You go, oh great, it's supposed to have a relation, it didn't happen. But it's a mysterious and wonderful thing, and you are lovable. That's the point to get. You're lovable just as you are, you know, still in process, still haven't sorted out your brokenness, still haven't sorted out, still got strange habits, still got strange protocols, still got complexes and fears and all kinds of stuff. Still lovable, and you can still be loving. And it kind of makes us realize that love and loving and being lovable, they're kind of separate, they're kind of deeper, they're kind of not, you know, it doesn't really matter who you are. You can see it, because if you look around, you see people that are clearly psychologically unstable, but they're in love relationships. You can see people who have got horrific bodies, you know, by standard definition, and they're in great relationships. So it's more about who you're being. Are you a place where it could land? Or are you so full of fear? Is it that, or, you know, who are you being that you are in the matter of relationships? Are you being that it's a real possibility for you, just as you are? And if you're not, then you can kind of invent that possibility. You can get that it's actually, you know what, it is possible. I am lovable, and I am loving. And once you get that kind of possibility, you've created something. You've created a clearing, you've created a space, which will then keep going as long as you kind of hold that, and it'll start to open up. And the next thing, you'll get kind of synchronistic signs that, yeah, you're lovable, and that it can happen. So it's a very mysterious thing. And so when people betray you, it's because you gave them invitation to, by who you were being. And we have blind spots. This is the point, that we're not always conscious, are we, of how we're being, or of, more accurately, who we're being, that something is. We're not conscious of it. We just see it reflected in the result. So that's where to look. Why did he betray me? Don't look to him, look to you. It's a horrible, horrible thing. Betrayal. It really undermines your sense of yourself if who you're being that you are is coming out of your psychological self. So it's an invitation, but you can also, once you recognize that it was who you were being, you were a space where that was kind of inevitable. I mean, a lot of the time, you know, if in readings that I give, people come and say, oh, he betrayed me, then it doesn't take much undoing before you find that very often when people go and sleep with other people, it's usually because they're not sleeping with their primal partner, or some aspect of it has, you know, fallen away, and that the other partner has made a meaning of that. It means that they're not loved, not wanted. And it's not necessarily the case. Usually what it is that we have this idea that let's keep it all peaceful, right? Let's keep it peaceful, and okay, I'm going to feel things, but I don't think I'm going to communicate them, because it will destabilize the relationship. It'll put us, in a and I don't want to do that. But if you don't communicate, and it compounds and it gets more and more and more, the next thing you know is that you've really grown away from that person. It's not that you don't love them, or it's not that their original connection isn't there. It's just that there's so much stuff that hasn't been shared. And that's why it's really important to communicate. Not because if you the relationship will lose its depth and its longevity to the degree that you don't communicate and take the risk of communicating. And you don't have to communicate in anger. That's another thing that happens, isn't it? The communication gets so much resentment, but that resentment is coming out of you not being got, but you haven't made the effort to express what you needed to communicate, because you didn't want to rock the boat, or you didn't have the courage. So one of the ways through that is that not much comes out of arguing. We have found, haven't we? Not much comes out of arguing. But there is a need for strong communication, for real communication. And the best way that I have found for that, and I've suggested this to people and they've done it and reported back to me that for them also it really works, is a thing called the listening agreement. When you feel an argument coming on, when you feel a tension coming, you identify it and recognize it, and then choose to have it not go down the road into an argument, but to invoke the listening agreement. The listening agreement is a wonderful thing. It's where you agree, you say to your partner, look, I'm not feeling good, could we invoke the listening agreement? And I say, okay. And so that means you sit opposite each other so that you can have eye-to-eye contact and feel each other across a table. It's not good to do it when you're drunk. And then the person agrees that they will listen to you, remaining in contact with you, and listen without interruption until you've fully expressed what it is that you need to express. And then the deal is that when you finished, and it can be as long as you want with silences, then he will have his say and he will speak back to you with just your full attention and no interruption. And this is so incredible, because what happens, one of the things that happens when we come out of alignment in a relationship, the amount of time that we don't even actually directly look at each other and see each other, the amount of time since you last looked at your partner properly and saw them, you can go into days and weeks. That even if you're living with the person, you're always not really getting them, looking at them, connecting to them. It's always like, So with the listening agreement, the first thing that happens is you look into your partner's eyes. You don't have to, you can put your sword and your shield down for a moment. The sword of attacking and the shield of defending, you can put that down and just give your full attention to your partner. And your partner will blossom in your attention. It's a very powerful thing, the gift of your listening. And usually what happens when you do that, you look into the person's eyes and they're giving you their attention, and somehow you see what it is, you get reconnected, you get realigned to what the real dynamic between you is. And when you're not arguing, you tend not to come from a kind of egoic place, because the root of arguing very often is needing to be right in order to preserve your projected position. But when you sit opposite each other and one of the partners is giving full listening, tends to be more hearty, tend to come from your heart. And the listening kind of encourages that. And you kind of become present to the other person, and present to what you're feeling, and present to your deeper values. So the quality of what is communicated has a much better chance of being real and authentic and useful. And after that, you sit back, and after you've said and give your full listening to your partner. And it's just wonderful when people feel heard. In those kind of conversations, it's your story about what's happening. Okay, it's not the greatest thing you could communicate. Well, you did this and then you did that. It's not the greatest thing you communicate, because it's always going to be you as the hard done by one, or it's always going to be from your perspective. There isn't a way that the drama was. It's how you got it. But what's important to communicate, and what really works in that listening agreement situation, is when you talk about what you need. I need you to give me da 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 da. I need more of this. I need this. When you ask for what you need, the person isn't obliged to give it to you. Isn't obliged to give it to you. But at least they know. And very often, when in loving relationships, when people are told what they need, I need you to be, I need you to just be with me on the sofa, and not have to do anything, just be with me. Oh, I didn't know. Okay, and they'll try that, just because they want to love you. And then when they start being kind, you ask for what you need and they give it to you, and from a kind place. Then the kindness thing starts to happen, and that is so great. My last relationship, the partner was so kind. She did kind things, and I found it really confronting, because it showed up how kind of mean I was in a very subtle way, and not like grand meanness, but kind of subtle meanness in terms of not being very generous with my doings in the relationship. So this was something tremendously valuable. Her kindness inspired me to be like that. It awakened it in me. So that's one of the things that gave the relationship to me great value, because I realized kindness as a currency in a relationship in a way that I hadn't before. Now I'm just going to look at this. What have we got here? It's horrible. I feel it was my fault. I reached out yesterday after 4 months, no contact. My downfall was communication and sabotage. Okay. It is horrible. I feel it was my fault. I reached out yesterday after 4 months, no contact. My downfall was communication and sabotage. When you have a conflict with someone, and you want to heal it, there's a way of doing it that works and a way of doing it that doesn't. Really, what they need to hear you say is, now what have you understood about who you were being? They don't want to hear about your analysis of them. They don't really want to hear your analysis of the relationship. They just want to know where you're at now and what you got from all that about yourself. It's different. It's like you have a complaint about someone and you act as if that's really who they are. No, that's who you're being that they are, and you got all kinds of payoffs for being that way about them. And they want to know, have you got that? What have you got from this drama that split us apart? While you were being separate, what did you get? What have you understood about yourself? And now what is your need? Now what is it you would like? And, you know, otherwise you say the wrong thing, and you can, you know, if you're just recounting your story and talking in terms of right and wrong or victimhood, then nothing new, there's no space for nothing new to come. Perhaps I might at some point do that, show you that process again. We'll show you that process, this 4-part amazing process of what you look at your complaint, you look at the payoff about the other person, you look at the payoff for holding that complaint, you look at the cost of holding that complaint, and having seen that, then you're good to go, good to create a new possibility. If you're continuously having relationships that fail and choosing wrong ones, then you need to look at yourself. You need to look at, well, what is my root thinking about me in relationships? You know, because who you're being that relationships are is giving you how you're getting them. God isn't saying, oh no, that person, I'm not going to give her love. I'm not going to give her a long, loving relationship. She did that. No, I'm not. I'm going to punish her by giving her not giving her that. God is not like that. The universe isn't like that. You are the generator of these experiences in relationships. And if you trace it back, you can see who you're being and where it came from. It wasn't always this way. So what happens is we get in a relationship, maybe the first one, who knows, way back there or whenever, and it goes pear-shaped. And then in that traumatic moment of being heartbroken, which is horrible, isn't it? Heartbreak is horrible, one of the most horrible experiences. But we're heartbroken. And in that moment, we do a lot of thinking about ourselves. We do a lot of thinking about us and relationships. We do a lot of thinking about us and life. But we're heartbroken. So we come up with all kinds of nonsense. But it seems real. Oh, I don't know what it is, but there's just something wrong. I think I'm wounded. I think it was my parents. I think it was my childhood. I just don't seem to be able to work with relationships. I always choose wrong ones, or they always break down. I don't know. And then that starts something. Those thoughts that have arisen out of trauma and misery get taken as accurate assessments of reality of who you are. And they're not. But we don't realize that. So it just compounds that relationships don't work. I'm not good enough. And then another one turns up who's picked up on that vibe that you're a clearing for and comes in and proves it again. Does the same thing again, perhaps in a different way. And the end result, again, is proving your deepest thought about yourself right. Well, you need to get a new thought about yourself, because it's not who you are. There isn't a way that you are. But who you're being that you are will give you how you get yourself. And it's as simple as that, as seeing that. You've got everything you need to have a beautiful, loving relationship. Once you get out of the mindset, once you expose the mindset that's obstructing it, compassionately seeing that it's built of nonsense, which arose sounding like common sense in a time of emotional trauma. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with it. You've got everything you need. I know, but there is. You don't know. There is something wrong with me. I was traumatized as a young child. I was, I had terrible things happen. Yeah. But no. Because if you really look right now, which is the only place where you actually exist, is right now here with me. That's the only place where you exist. Is there something wrong? Right now, as you look into the screen, is there something wrong? What's actually looking out? Is there something wrong with that? That awareness? That seeing? No, there's nothing wrong with that. So you find that place where there's nothing wrong, where you're whole, where you're complete, where you're fulfilled. It's there, your presence. And from there, if you need to, look at your psychological self. And you'll get some insights. But if you try and deal with it from the place of not being good enough, you try and deal with not being good enough, you won't make much progress. You have to step outside. You have to objectify that psychological self and be on a platform of wholeness, of clarity, of peace, which is always here in this moment. Okay, so each relationship we have, I think this is true. It does. Each one is a continuation of the learning about relationships, about how to love, and sooner or later we get it. If things are patterned, they're only patterned till we get them. It's like emotions get triggered until they're fully felt, and then they're gone. And it's the same with patterns in relationships. I've met people who continuously attract. I remember one woman I met who came for readings, and she continuously attracted violent men, men who, properly physically violent with her. And yet I met a couple of them, or she pointed them out, and you would not have known, you wouldn't have identified that person as a violent person. But who she was being that he was brought that out in him. I don't know if if they were all had a history of it or whatever. But until you get that, she needed to see that somehow who she was being that she was, who she was being that relationships were, who she was being that men were, was drawing that kind of energy to her. When she arrived to see me, she was playing the point of victim. And fair enough. Fair enough. But that isn't going to help you. You have to get to the place where, okay, I'm the only common factor in all of this. Those people I'm the common factor. I'm the one that 7 guys in succession have come and beaten. So what am I being? How am I being? Where is my blind spot? Because some of the deepest, well, most of the deepest stuff in us is unconscious to us, and it drives us. And we have to compassionately look and say, okay, how am I creating this? If it's so, how am I doing it? How am I being such that these people think it's okay to betray me or to attack me or to be violent with me? Am I being like a space where they can come and do that? There isn't a truth about those events. This is a technique that works most of the time for people. If you take the position, who I'm being that they are gives me how I get themselves. It's a tool. All right? It's not the ultimate truth. But it's a tool that can really help you get to a new level of causality. Why am I getting this result? So the thing to affirm is that you're lovable. The thing to affirm is that you're loving. Nobody loves like you. Nobody loves like you. Nobody's touch is like your touch. It doesn't matter what your psychological self is going on in there, but nobody's touch is like your touch. Nobody's smile is like your smile. Nobody's laugh is like your laugh. Nobody's caring. Nobody cares like you care. Nobody. Your mother doesn't care like you care. Your sister doesn't care like you care. Only you care like you do. These are all the wonderful things about you. If you think too much about yourself, you will only see yourself as what can be thought about, and you'll forget the things that can't be thought about, like what it's like to be in your presence, like how you care, like your brand of kindness. These are tremendously important parts of you. Heart parts. You have a heart. You have a loving heart that is not broken, that is not damaged, that cannot be damaged. So, you know, you never know when love's coming. Really, you never know. And you can, things that tend to make love go is when you presume about it, when you assume about it, when you take it for granted, when you don't honor it, then love can fly off. But what attracts love is a being who is open to it, who's not besieged by negativity in the matter of relationships and love, who recognizes that they're lovable just as they are. What incredible, that's such good news, isn't it? You're lovable just as you are. Just as you are, just exactly as you are. In all ways, the way your body is, the way your mind is, the way your bank balance is, the way your life is, just as you are, you're lovable. Love coming's got nothing to do with that. Now, if who we're being that love is that it does have something to do with that, then that is how love will turn up. That is now you're creating a different thing. But essentially it doesn't. You're lovable exactly as you are. Know that. Affirm that. Really take that to the deepest place, that you're lovable. You're able to love. And you're loving. It's a possibility. So, any more questions? Any more questions, anybody? Any more comments? Speak now. Anything? It's funny because when I say that you're lovable, it fills me with such joy. Because it's true. And it's not, it's not the way that love is normally projected, isn't it? Like in the movies, it's kind of not projected that way, that everybody's lovable. Literally everybody's lovable. We all make mistakes. And there's going to be mistakes. We all say the wrong thing when we get drunk. We all say the wrong thing when we're confused. But it doesn't make any difference. We are lovable and we're loving. We know how to love. We know what that is. We innately know what that is. And it's an option for us. Love is really, what's intended for us. Love is intended for us. Loving relationships is intended for us. When we take all the shit out of it, when we take the psychological self out of it, the default feeling between human beings is what? Love. And every broken heart, one thing I noticed, I've had my heart broken a few times. It's horrible. It's really, it can really stain months, even years of life experience. This ongoing theme of just dealing with that, dealing with attachment and the breaking of attachment. But what I have noticed is that every time your heart breaks, after it's healed, which it does, you do get over it. After it heals, your capacity, or my capacity to love, seems to have grown. Somehow after every heartbreak, after I've recovered from every heartbreak, I can feel universal love. I can feel unconditional love. I can feel just love more easily. So there's a very powerful upside. People say, no, I'm not going to go into a relationship because I don't want to have my heart broken anymore. But the fact of the matter is, I was thinking about this. I was thinking, okay, let's in the relationship before you had your heart broken, how great was it? Okay, it was very great. And then before you had your heart broken, there were a few downsides, but mainly it was great. And then after your heart was broken, it was shit for a certain amount of time. If you make that into an equation, even if you take the bad moments in the relationship and what it took to get out the pain you experienced in the heartbreak period, and you add it all together and subtract the down from the up, you still come out on top. Because the other thing you add to that equation is, and after it all, was your capacity to love increased? And it goes, yes. So you have the plus is the great time in the relationship and the full benefit afterwards of having an increased, expanded heart, minus the misery that was in the relationship and the misery of the heartbreak. And usually what you come out with is that you still benefited. You still came out on top even though it was miserable. So it's worth doing it. It's worth entering into again. Love, it's better, they say it's better to love and fail than not to have loved at all, because you will get it right. You will get it right. And these are the most valuable lessons, aren't they? So if you're sitting there kind of subtly thinking, oh, you know what, I don't think I can really do relationships, I can't go through that pain again, then don't think like that. Or if you do think like that, know that that is who you're being that relationships are. So it's not really going to attract them, number one. And if they do come, you're going to be miserable through it. The beingness you need is that I'm lovable and I'm loving and I'm going to get it right. It's possible that I get it right. That I'm not going to collapse into someone. I'm not needy. I'm not going to be complete when I get a relationship. I already am complete. And how do you know that? By visiting that place within, that it is immediately complete. You feel complete. You feel fulfilled. You feel that you are who you are and it's fine. Not in the psychological side, but where you really are. And then you got less and less projecting your psychological unresolvedness into your relationships, and they can become clearer and simpler and more beautiful and profound. Okay, so unless anybody has something they want to say in the column in their comments, then we'll call it a day. It's amazing. It's amazing. Just when you think it's not going to happen, it does. Just when you think you can't, you can. Okay then. I'll be back on the 26th, continuing in the theme of relationships. If you have a topic or a comment that you'd like me to look at, or you want a one-to-one reading, then let me know. Okay. Have a great day.